Hey guys, welcome to the classic craftsman home I just bought. My sister Heather was beaming at her phone, her voice dripping with fake excitement for the 50,000 people watching her live stream. I was staring at her through my security application, my hand shaking as I stood in the hospital break room. Behind her, my parents were lounged on my sofa, sipping tea like they owned the place. There was no mystery about how they got in. 2 days ago, my mother faked a crying fit at my workplace, just so she could swipe the spare key from my bag. Heather was 3 months behind on rent and about to lose her marriage, so she decided my hard-earned house was the perfect stage to fake a $100,000 brand deal. Pushing past the shock, I bypassed the urge to call her or scream. I simply tapped the lockdown icon on my screen and hit the emergency alarm. The heavy steel deadbolts of my front and back doors slid into place with a loud, mechanical thud. Instantly, every smart bulb in the house switched from warm yellow to a violent, pulsing red. Then came the siren. 120 decibels of pure, ear-shattering panic ripped through the living room speakers, vibrating the floorboards and shaking the garbage bags they had stuffed my belongings into. I leaned close to my phone's microphone. My voice echoed through the house intercom, cold and completely detached. Security breach logged. Police dispatched. You are being recorded. Heather flinched like she had been struck by a physical blow. The phone slipped from her fingers, crashing onto the hardwood floor. The camera angled upward, still broadcasting her horrified, ghost-white face to tens of thousands of strangers. The live chat on her screen exploded into a blur of rapid-fire, confused comments. Over on the sofa, my father jumped, knocking his porcelain teacup onto my rug. My mother clamped her hands over her ears, her mouth hanging open in silent shock. The flawless, wealthy aesthetic they had so carefully staged out of my stolen life was collapsing on the live internet. Watching them scramble like trapped animals, the absolute sickness of their plans settled into my bones. People usually think toxic relatives just want to borrow cash or sleep on your couch. That is a dangerous lie. The worst kind of parasites do not want your money. They want your identity. They want the sweat, the grueling 12-hour night shifts, and the dignity you built, just so they can wear it like a costume over their own hollow lives. My parents raised Heather to believe the universe was her personal dressing room. They fed her toxic entitlement for 32 years, turning her into an empty shell who needed a fake $100,000 brand deal just to feel real. She craved the image of the successful woman who earned a vintage home, without ever putting in a single second of the actual work. The siren wailed on, drowning out my mother's frantic yelling. Heather dropped to her knees, desperately swiping at her cracked screen to kill the live feed, her hands shaking violently. I set my phone face up on the hospital break room table and took a slow sip of my lukewarm coffee. Let them panic. When I turned 18, my parents never bought me a birthday cake. Instead, my mother handed me a printed lease agreement for my childhood bedroom. $800 a month, due on the 1st. She looked me right in the eye and called it a lesson in real-world responsibility. The very next week, my father wrote Heather a $50,000 check to launch a luxury candle business. She blew the cash on designer clothes and folded the company in 6 months. My parents called that an investment in her potential. The unfairness used to eat me alive. I spent my early 20s exhausted, eating cold noodles in the hospital cafeteria while they funded my sister's fake aesthetic. Empathy for them died a long time ago. 3 years ago, I changed the game. I started fabricating a massive mountain of credit card debt. I drove a rusty sedan with a rattling engine and complained about collection calls at every family dinner. The moment I painted myself as a financial liability, their demands for my paycheck vanished. They pulled away, disgusted by my fake poverty. While they ignored me, I picked up extra night shifts. Every spare dollar went straight into a private trust. I bought the vintage craftsman house under a sterile, untraceable limited liability company. I built my sanctuary brick by brick, entirely in the shadows. Working trauma in the emergency room strips away your tolerance for theatrics. You learn to completely ignore the screaming and just read the vitals. You learn to keep your hands steady while the rest of the room spins out of control. Looking down at my phone, watching Heather pound her manicured fists against my reinforced front door, my pulse rested at a perfectly calm 60 beats per minute. My mother was weeping into her palms. My father was pacing the living room like a caged animal. They shattered the naive 18-year-old girl a long time ago. Today, they were dealing with the woman who rebuilt her. Zero pity existed in my chest for the intruders trapped inside my house. Flashing blue lights reflected against my living room windows. 2 patrol officers stepped onto the porch. Heavy knocking echoed through the camera's 2-way audio. The smart system automatically unlocked the front door for law enforcement. Heather threw herself at the first officer the second he stepped inside. The tears were instant, perfectly calibrated for the live stream still running on the floor. She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. "Officer, thank God you are here," she sobbed, clutching her chest. My sister is having a mental breakdown. I rent this house from her. I have the lease right here. She is trying to illegally evict me out of jealousy because I just landed a massive sponsorship. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered on the first ring. Ma'am, this is Officer Davies. A gruff voice said over the line. I am standing in your house. The woman here just handed me a signed lease agreement with your name on it. If she is a legal tenant, we cannot remove her. This is a civil matter. You will have to take it to court. A sharp spike of adrenaline hit my chest. This was Heather's ultimate toxic card. Cornered and desperate to save her lucrative deal, she was betting her entire future on a forged piece of paper. She thought she could manipulate the police the same way she manipulated our parents. She thought a fake signature would buy her enough time to finish her video tour, grab the cash, and figure out the rest later. My grip tightened around my coffee cup. Officer Davies, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Do not let her leave that room. Keep her exactly where she is. I am pulling up the digital audit trail right now. Without hesitation, I opened my electronic signature administration application. One swipe, 2 taps, and the official certificate of completion was sitting in his inbox. No expensive lawyers. No waiting days for a court subpoena. Just raw, irrefutable data. Open the digital file, officer, I said, my voice projecting crisp and loud through the living room speakers. Scroll down to page 3. Look at the internet protocol address attached to my supposed signature. Dead silence hung in the room. Through the camera, the officer swiped his screen. His brow furrowed as he read the data. That address belongs to the cell phone currently shaking in my sister's hand, I told him. And the timestamp? It shows the document was signed exactly 17 minutes ago, using my home's local wireless connection. The trap snapped shut. The officer's head jerked up. His eyes locked onto Heather, her face drained of all color. The theatrical tears evaporated, replaced by a raw, suffocating terror. She opened her mouth, but only a pathetic, raspy squeak came out. She finally understood. Her little paper trick did not buy her time. It just handed the police a time-stamped confession for felony forgery. Ma'am, Officer Davies said, his voice stripped of all prior sympathy. Put your hands behind your back. The harsh, metallic clatter of the handcuffs echoing through the house was the most beautiful music ever played. Heather thrashed, screaming incoherently about her brand deal and her followers. But the officer shoved her firmly against the wall. Over by the kitchen, my father made his move. Sweat beaded heavily on his forehead as he bolted for the back door, desperately trying to slip away. A second beat cop stepped right into the frame, grabbing his shoulder and shoving him back into the center of the room. My mother instantly collapsed onto the sofa. She clutched her chest, her voice trembling with manufactured frailty. Officer, please. I am just a confused old woman. I thought she bought this house. I had no idea we were breaking in. I leaned closer to my phone screen. With one tap, I pulled up the porch camera audio file from 20 minutes earlier. My mother's voice blasted through the living room speakers, sharp, cruel, and impatient. Hurry up and move those garbage bags before Ariana's shift ends. Linda choked on her own breath. Her jaw snapped shut. She stared up at the camera, her eyes wide with total defeat. Justin backed away like his wife was suddenly contagious. He threw his hands in the air, his face twisted in cowardice. She lied to me, he yelled to the cops, pointing directly at Heather's handcuffed wrists. I want it on the record. I am filing for divorce tomorrow. I have nothing to do with this. Heather sobbed hysterically, dark mascara running down her cheeks, begging Justin to help her. He refused to even look at her. The officers grabbed my parents by their arms, hauling them toward the front door alongside my screaming sister. As they dragged Heather past her own dropped phone, the screen was still glowing brightly. 50,000 strangers were watching the golden child get shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The internet moves fast, but corporate lawyers move faster. By Tuesday morning, the luxury interior brand reviewed the viral footage of Heather's arrest. They immediately invoked the morals clause in her contract. The $100,000 sponsorship vanished. In its place came a brutal lawsuit demanding the immediate return of her $25,000 advance. She was officially bankrupt. Justin did exactly what a coward does when the ship starts sinking. He packed his bags and filed for divorce to shield his own credit score from her financial fallout. He left Heather sitting in a county jail cell with a public defender. My parents caught the full force of the blast radius. The prosecutor formally charged Linda and Thomas as accessories to trespassing. The police released their body camera footage to the local news. Their carefully crafted country club reputation shattered overnight. The community they spent 30 years trying to impress now crossed the street when they saw them coming. My phone vibrated constantly for 3 days. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I had avoided for years flooded my inbox with massive paragraphs about forgiveness, mercy, and blood loyalty. Leaving every single message unread, I opened my phone settings, highlighted the entire family contact group, and pressed block. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Friday evening, the summer heat finally broke. I poured a glass of Cabernet and stepped out onto the wide, wooden porch of my craftsman home. My golden retriever rescue rested his heavy head on my bare feet. The neighborhood was perfectly quiet. I took a slow sip of my wine, completely untouched by the fire burning down across town. It took 8 months for the gavel to finally fall. The judge sentenced Heather to 3 years in state prison for felony forgery, with eligibility for parole after 18 months. The court also ordered a restitution of $25,000 to the interior design firm. Justin's divorce was finalized before she ever saw the inside of her cell. My parents faced their own reckoning. The judge sentenced Linda and Thomas to 300 hours of community service and 3 years of probation for accessory to trespass. The real punishment was the social execution. The country club revoked their membership. The local church asked them to step down from the parish council. They became the neighborhood ghosts, hiding inside their house with the blinds drawn. Their $50,000 reputation reduced to absolute zero. 6 months into her sentence, a wrinkled envelope arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was Heather's, stamped by the state penitentiary. I stood on my porch, running my thumb over the ink. A year ago, a letter like this would have sent my pulse into a frantic rhythm of guilt and obligation. I would have agonized over whether she was eating, or if she finally understood the damage she caused. Tossing the envelope straight into the kitchen trash can, completely unopened, I let out a deep breath. The silence that followed felt incredibly light. It was the quiet, peaceful sound of a parasite, finally starving to death. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, the air inside my craftsman home felt entirely different. The dining table was covered in mismatched plates, loud laughter, and the smell of roasted turkey. My chosen family filled the chairs. 2 nurses from the emergency room who had held my hand through the worst traumas, my next-door neighbor who always brought treats for my rescue dog, and the brilliant lawyer who helped me slam the door shut on my past. We drank cheap wine and talked until midnight. Nobody asked me to shrink myself to make them comfortable. Nobody calculated what I owed them. Sitting at that table, the reality of the sickness I survived became crystal clear. Toxic families do not love you for who you are. They love you for what they can extract from you. They view you as a utility, a backup plan, a bottomless bank account to fund their own egos. When you finally stop paying the toll, they refuse to apologize. They just try to break down your door. If you are watching this, and you are the one paying the price for your family's delusions, I need you to remember 3 things. Rule number 1. Misplaced grace is complicity. Paying off toxic people never makes them grateful. It just makes them hungrier. Rule number 2. Never argue with manipulation. Do not explain yourself, do not yell, and do not cry. Crush their lies with absolute silence and undeniable boundaries. Rule number 3. Blood is what flows in your veins to keep you alive, not a noose for someone else to hang you with. Cutting off toxic relatives is never cruelty. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. You are allowed to walk away from the people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Trust is earned, not owed. Have you ever had to change the locks on your own life to keep your family out? Share your story in the comments below. Your decision to walk away might be the exact blueprint someone else needs to survive today. Subscribe, and let us keep building our freedom. I am Ariana, and I am finally free. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did she pay them $800 a month at 18? Why did she endure that blatant disrespect and wait so long before finally dropping the hammer? Let us get one thing straight. Ariana was not stupid. She was trapped in a psychological trap known as intermittent reinforcement. I like to call it the slot machine effect. Think about it. Toxic families do not abuse you 100% of the time. If they did, you would pack your bags and leave immediately. Instead, they give you tiny, unpredictable crumbs of validation. A fake smile here, a rare compliment there. It keeps you pulling the lever, hoping that this time, you will finally hit the jackpot and win their genuine love. You do not stay because you are weak. You stay because you are addicted to the hope that they will eventually change. But what makes this story an absolute masterclass in survival is how Ariana finally broke that addiction. She stopped playing their emotional game and started playing financial defense. Let us break down her 3 genius street-smart moves. First, the buyout. Instead of arguing about fairness when they demanded her money, Ariana faked a massive mountain of credit card debt. She made herself look entirely broke. Parasites only attach to hosts with resources. By playing financially dead, she effectively bought her own freedom, quietly funneling her real money into a private trust and purchasing her home through a limited liability company. Second, building the case. When her family invaded her sanctuary, she did not rush over to scream, cry, or beg them to leave. She let the smart home cameras roll. She gathered undeniable audio and high-definition video evidence. Toxic people will always try to gaslight you and manipulate the police. But a video recording and a 120-decibel alarm simply do not lie. Third, the audit strategy. Scammers and manipulators thrive in the gray areas of emotion, so you have to hit them with cold, hard facts. When Heather pulled out that forged lease agreement, Ariana did not panic or argue with the police officer. She pulled the digital audit trail. The Internet Protocol address and the exact timestamp from the electronic signature software were the absolute nails in the coffin. Scammers hate details. Data does not care about your tears. And it certainly does not care about your $100,000 brand deal. Here is the ultimate verdict. You cannot negotiate with people who view you as an automatic teller machine. If your family treats your boundaries as suggestions and your bank account as their personal emergency fund, it is time to change the locks. Your peace of mind is the most expensive asset you will ever own. Stop letting people who have not earned it live there rent-free. Have you ever had to use the audit strategy or fake your own failure to escape a toxic relative? Drop your survival story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button. And until next time, keep your boundaries high and your receipts ready.